The transport station was filled with voices, loud announcements, and the sound of heavy boots against the metal floor. Aliens of every kind rushed to catch shuttles, their tall frames towering over the small human girl standing alone near the center of the hall. She wore a plain black jacket and carried a small bag on her shoulder. Her brown hair fell to her neck, and her face showed no emotion. To anyone watching, she looked ordinary, quiet, easy to ignore. That was exactly why the group of alien cadets saw her as easy prey. "Look at the little human," one of the cadets sneered. His skin shimmered blue, and his long teeth flashed as he laughed. "She looks lost." Another alien with bright red eyes stepped closer. "Maybe she needs help finding the nursery," he mocked. The group burst into laughter. The sound echoed across the hall. Sharp and mean, she didn't answer. She didn't look scared either. She just watched them with steady, dark eyes. That quiet made the biggest alien lean closer. He stood a full head taller than her, his shoulders broad, armor plates covering his chest. His name patch read Vrock, and he enjoyed humiliating new arrivals. "What's wrong, little human?" Vrock growled. His voice was deep and heavy. "Too weak to speak." She tilted her head slightly. "No," she said softly. The other aliens laughed louder. "No." The red-eyed one repeated, "That's all you've got?" Vrock shoved her bag to the ground. It hit the floor with a dull thud. Some travelers stopped to look but quickly turned away. No one wanted to get involved with Vrock's group. Everyone knew how they treated the weak. "Pick it up," Vrock ordered. His tone wasn't a request. "Pick it up, human," but she didn't move. She stood still, her hands loose at her sides. Her eyes didn't flinch, not even when he stepped closer. Her silence made something shift in the air. The laughter became uneasy. "Hey," the red-eyed one whispered. "Why isn't she scared?" "She should be shaking," another muttered. Vrock reached out to grab her shoulder. His heavy hand moved fast, but her reaction was faster. In one smooth motion, she twisted his wrist and stepped aside. The sound of his body hitting the floor cut through the noise like a blade. The crowd gasped. "What? How?" Vrock groaned, holding his twisted wrist. She didn't say anything. She just stared down at him with calm eyes, like a hunter watching its prey breathe for the last time. The red-eyed alien lunged at her. "You'll pay for that, human." She shifted her weight. Her knee met his chest with brutal precision. He dropped to the floor, gasping for air. The others stepped back, their earlier laughter gone. The quiet girl moved like a shadow, fast, silent, controlled. "She's not normal," one of them whispered. "You picked the wrong human," she said. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. Two more aliens tried to rush her at once. She ducked under the first punch, grabbed the second alien's arm, and flipped him onto the floor in one smooth movement. Her boot pressed against the other's throat, but she didn't apply pressure. "It was a warning. Do you want to continue?" she asked. The aliens froze. Sweat glistened on their foreheads. They had thought she was weak, but this girl moved like someone who had fought monsters, not students. Her steps were light, her breath steady, no panic, no hesitation. "Security's coming," one of them whispered nervously. She slowly picked up her bag, slung it over her shoulder and looked at Vrock, who still sat on the floor clutching his arm. He met her eyes for the first time, not with arrogance, but with fear. "What are you?" he whispered. She leaned closer so only he could hear. "A deathworlder," she said quietly. The word alone made him pale. Everyone in the galaxy knew what that meant. Humans weren't just from any planet. They were from a death world, a place where everything wanted to kill you. Only the strongest survived when the security officers rushed in. The aliens were already on the ground. Groaning and gasping, she stood straight, calm, as if nothing had happened. "Explain this," one officer demanded. Looking at her, "They attacked me," she said simply. The officer checked the recordings, then nodded slowly. "You didn't even draw a weapon." "I didn't need to," she replied. Vrock lowered his head. His pride was shattered. His friends avoided her gaze. The quiet girl walked away without looking back. The whispers started before she even reached the gate. "She took them down without blinking," someone said. "She's human," another whispered. "A deathworlder." The sound followed her down the corridor like a shadow. She didn't care. She didn't need to shout or fight again. The fear in their eyes was enough, in a station full of noise. It was the quiet human everyone would remember. The silence after the fight didn't last long. Rumors spread like fire through the academy. By morning, every hallway, cafeteria table, and training room echoed with one story: how a quiet human girl had taken down Vrock's entire gang without breaking a sweat. Some called her dangerous, some called her lucky, and some didn't believe it at all, but Vrock believed it. He still felt the pain in his twisted wrist and the cold stare of the girl who had not even raised her voice. Vrock sat in the training hall, his jaw tight. His pride burned hotter than the pain. He wasn't used to losing, especially not to someone so small. His friend Kor leaned against the wall, his red eyes still slightly bruised. "She made you look weak," Kor hissed. "You're going to let that stand?" Vrock clenched his fist. "No," he growled. "Nobody makes a fool of me. She's just a human," another cadet said nervously. "We should leave her alone." Vrock snapped his head toward him. "She's not just a human," he said through his teeth. "She's a Deathworlder, and that makes her a threat," Kor smirked. "Then we removed the threat. They didn't plan to fight her in the open this time. No cameras, no crowds. They wanted to catch her where no one would step in. The Academy's lower tunnels were the perfect place, dark, quiet, and forgotten. Meanwhile, the girl walked through the Academy halls like nothing had happened. Her steps were silent, her eyes steady. The whispers followed her everywhere she went. But she didn't care. She had heard worse things in worse places. She had grown up learning that fear made others dangerous, so she stayed calm. A young alien cadet named Lin caught up to her near the dorm entrance. He was smaller than the others, with silver skin and bright green eyes. "Hey," he whispered, glancing around nervously. "You shouldn't be out alone tonight." She stopped and looked at him. "Why?" "Vrock," Lin said quietly. "He's not going to let it go. He and his friends, they're planning something." Her expression didn't change. "Where?" she asked. "The tunnels under the West Wing," Lin said, his voice shaking. "Don't go down there, please." She gave a small nod. "Thank you," and walked away. Lin watched her go, a cold chill running down his spine. She wasn't scared, and somehow that scared him even more. When night came, Vrock and his gang waited in the tunnels. The flickering lights cast long shadows on the walls. Water dripped from rusted pipes, echoing through the narrow space. "She won't come," one of them whispered. "She's not stupid. She'll come," Vrock said coldly. "And when she does, we make sure she never stands again." Their confidence started to crack when they heard it. Soft footsteps echoing from the darkness. Not fast, not hesitant, just slow and steady. She stepped into the dim light, her jacket zipped, her hair tied back, her face calm. Her eyes moved over each of them like a hunter counting prey. "You shouldn't have come here," Kor sneered. "Trying to sound brave, I know," she said. "But here I am." Vrock stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. "You caught me off guard last time," he growled. "That won't happen again." She tilted her head slightly. "It doesn't need to." Kor moved first, fast and loud. He swung at her, expecting her to dodge the obvious attack. But instead, she stepped inside his swing, grabbed his collar, and used his weight against him. His body slammed into the wall, and he crumbled to the ground. The others hesitated. The way she moved, it wasn't just training. It was instinct. Two aliens rushed from the sides. She ducked under one arm, twisted another wrist, and swept their legs out in one smooth move. They hit the floor almost at the same time. "You're making this worse for yourselves," she said calmly. Vrock roared and charged at her like a beast. His heavy boots thudded on the metal floor. He swung wide, putting all his strength into the hit. She shifted her weight at the last moment, and his fist slammed into the wall with a crack. He howled in pain. She spun behind him, caught his injured arm, and twisted it again, not enough to break, just enough to remind him. Her voice was quiet, steady. "I told you to walk away." The last two cadets backed into the wall. Shaking, Vrock fell to his knees, gasping. His arrogance had burned away, leaving only fear. "What are you?" he rasped. "I warned you," she said, and let go of him. He collapsed on the floor. Clutching his arm, she stepped back, her face unreadable. The tunnel was silent except for their groans. The quiet girl adjusted her bag and walked away. The flickering lights cast her shadow long against the wall. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Vrock's gang wouldn't follow her again, above the tunnels. The academy carried on like nothing had happened, but in the darkness something had changed. Fear had found a new name, and it was hers. The night after the tunnel fight was different. The academy felt tense, not because of noise, but because of the silence that followed her everywhere she went. When she stepped into the cafeteria the next morning, conversations stopped for a heartbeat, spoons froze halfway to mouths, and dozens of alien eyes followed her. Nobody laughed this time. Nobody whispered loud enough to let her hear. It was the silence of fear. She walked calmly to the food counter, picked a simple tray, and sat down in the corner as if nothing had happened. A few cadets exchanged nervous glances. Some avoided looking at her altogether. Others studied her like she was a predator walking in their home. "She's not normal," someone whispered from a nearby table. "She took down Vrock and his gang," another muttered back. "All of them. In the tunnels. Deathworlder," someone else added in a low voice. As if the word itself carried weight, she ignored them all. She had been through worse than whispers. Her hands stayed steady, her eyes calm, but inside she could feel the shift. Fights like that never stayed quiet. Word reached ears it shouldn't, and sometimes trouble didn't come from gangs or bullies. Sometimes it came from people with real power. Across the hall, Commander Tal watched her carefully. His grey uniform marked him as one of the Academy's internal security officers. He wasn't like Vrock's gang. Tal didn't pick fights for fun. He picked them when he thought someone was dangerous, and the human girl was now at the top of his list. Tal turned to his aide, a thin alien with pale scales. "That's her," he said, "the one who dropped 6 cadets." "Yes." "Commander," the aide replied nervously, "there are recordings, but none of them show her using a weapon." "That's what worries me," Tal said coldly. "No weapons, no help, just her." She felt their eyes on her before they even approached. Her instincts, sharpened by years of surviving on a death world, caught the subtle shift in the air behind her. She set down her fork and waited. "Cadet!" Tarl's deep voice cut through the cafeteria. Everyone turned to look as he walked toward her table. His boots made no sound, but his presence was heavy. "You and I need to talk." She looked up at him, calm and unshaken. "About what?" He didn't smile. "About the mess you caused in the tunnels. They attacked me," she said simply. "I saw the footage," he replied. "You didn't just defend yourself. You dismantled 6 trained cadets in under 30 seconds. They should have stayed out of my way," she said. The room was so quiet that even the hum of the air vents sounded loud. Tal leaned closer. "People like you don't just walk into my academy without reason. Who trained you?" She stared at him. "Earth," his jaw tightened. The word Earth carried more weight than anyone wanted to admit. Deathworlders didn't just end up here by accident. Tal knew that, and she knew he knew. "You're dangerous," Tal said softly, but there was steel in his tone. "And dangerous people either work with me or disappear." She stood up slowly, matching his height with a cold stare. "I don't work for bullies." The entire cafeteria held its breath. Nobody had ever spoken to Tal like that. He wasn't just security. He was feared, respected, and ruthless. But she didn't flinch. Tal smirked, but it wasn't a nice smile. "You'll regret that," he said, then turned away. His boots echoed on the floor as he left. But the threat lingered like smoke in the air. That night she didn't sleep. Deathworlders never ignored danger. She sat on the edge of her bed, her knife balanced on her knee, listening to every sound, every vibration through the wall. They would come. She didn't know when, but she could feel it like a storm building on the horizon. Around midnight, the lights in her dorm flickered. The hallway outside grew quiet, too quiet. She slipped on her jacket, tied her hair back, and moved like a shadow to the door. The metal handle was cold under her hand. 3 figures were waiting outside. Not cadets this time, but armed security. Their black armor gleamed under the emergency lights. One of them stepped forward, his voice flat and rehearsed. "Cadet, you're to come with us." She tilted her head. "Why?" "For questioning," he said. But the way his finger hovered near his weapon told her this wasn't a conversation. She slowly raised her hands, but her mind was already working. She didn't fight because she was angry. She fought to survive. And something about Tal's talk earlier told her this wasn't going to be fair. They marched her down the long, cold corridor toward the lower levels of the academy, where walls turned from clean white to grey steel. She could hear the hum of machines far below, a place meant for silence and control, not conversation inside the interrogation room. Tal stood waiting, his hands behind his back. "Sit," he ordered. She sat calm as ever. Her eyes scanned the room. One door, one camera, 3 guards. "You don't belong here," Tal said, circling her like a wolf. "And that makes you a problem." "Maybe the problem isn't me," she said quietly. He slammed his hand on the table. "Don't play games with me, girl." She didn't blink. "I don't play games." He leaned closer. "Tell me why you're here." She met his eyes and said slowly, "To remind people like you that fear works both ways." The words hit him like a blade. For the first time, Tal's smirk disappeared. He saw something in her eyes he hadn't expected. Calm, deadly certainty, the kind that didn't bluff. Outside the room, a silent alarm began to blink. Someone was listening, and the storm that was about to hit the academy wouldn't be one they could control. The red light above the interrogation room door flashed softly. The hum of the security system filled the silence like a slow heartbeat. She sat in the cold metal chair, wrists resting loosely on the table. The guards stood stiff against the wall, waiting for Tal's order. Their hands hovered over their weapons, but she didn't look afraid. She never did. Tal paced slowly around the room, his boots tapping against the floor. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp like a knife. "You think you're special," he said, "but this isn't Earth. This isn't your war world." She tilted her head slightly. "I never said it was. You came here, you broke my rules. You humiliated my cadets." Tal's voice grew harder. "I should lock you up right now." She met his gaze with quiet steel. "You can try." The nearest guard tensed, but Tal raised a hand, stopping him. There was something about her stillness that made even trained soldiers nervous. She wasn't threatening anyone, yet the air itself felt heavier. "You're dangerous," Tal said slowly, "and people like you don't stay invisible for long." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "So here's what happens. You tell me why you're here, who sent you, and maybe, just maybe, you walk out of here breathing." Her lips curved in the smallest hint of a smile. "If I told you, you wouldn't believe me. Try me," he snapped. She leaned back in the chair, eyes calm. "I didn't come here to start a war, but if you push me, you'll finish one." Tal slammed his hand on the table. The metal rang out like a gunshot. "The guards jumped." "Enough games," he growled. "I know what you are. Then why are you so afraid?" she asked softly. The words hit him harder than he expected. For a moment his mask of control slipped. Just a second, but enough for her to see it. Before he could respond, the lights flickered. A low rumble shook the floor. Alarms began to scream through the hallway. Red emergency lights flashed across the walls. One guard pressed a finger to his earpiece and shouted, "Commander! External breach on the west platform." "What?" Tal barked. "By who?" "Unknown ship just dropped out of FTL without warning," the guard said. Panic rising in his voice, Tal turned sharply to the girl, suspicion burning in his eyes. "This is you," he hissed. She raised an eyebrow. "You really think I needed an army?" Outside the door, heavy footsteps echoed. The sound wasn't academy boots, too heavy, too synchronized. The guards looked at each other nervously. Tal motioned them toward the door. "Hold this room," he ordered. "Nobody in, nobody out." She remained in the chair, calm as ever, as if the alarms were background music. Tal stormed out, leaving 2 guards behind. One of them muttered, "What the hell is going on?" She slowly stood up, stretching her hands. "I'd leave if I were you." "Sit down," the older guard barked, pointing his weapon at her. She looked at him, calm and unblinking. "If you stay in this room, you're going to regret it." The ground shook again. Harder this time. A loud boom echoed through the lower levels, followed by the sound of metal tearing. The guards flinched, and cursed under his breath. "What was that?" "Your door," she said a second later. The reinforced steel door buckled like paper. A dark figure stepped through the smoke, tall, wrapped in combat armor that didn't belong to the Academy. It was black, sleek, marked with the red emblem of an Earth Special Forces unit. "Target secured," the figure said through the helmet speaker. The guards tried to raise their weapons, but they were already on the floor before they could fire. The figure moved with deadly precision, knocking one out with a single strike and pinning the other against the wall. "About time," she said, picking up the fallen guard's ID badge. "Extraction team was delayed by local patrols," the armored soldier replied. "Your signal was received." "I didn't send a signal," she said, her voice quiet but sharp. The soldier tilted his head. "Then someone else did." That single sentence changed everything. Someone had known she was here. Someone had called them in. They moved through the emergency corridors. Alarms blaring overhead. Smoke curled through the vents, and security forces scrambled to respond to the unknown ship landing on the platform. Tal stood in the control center shouting orders. "Seal every door. No one leaves this facility?" "Too late," a voice said behind him. He turned and froze. She stood there with the armored soldier, calm and alive, her eyes locked onto his. "You're not walking out," Tal growled. Drawing his weapon, she stepped forward slowly. "I don't need to walk," she said. "I just need to remind you what Earth sends when it's watching." The armored figure raised a device, and the control screens behind Tal went black one by one. Systems shut down like falling dominoes. Every camera feed, every door lock, every defense code, gone. "You thought I was alone," she said softly. "You were wrong." Tal's hand shook, rage and fear mixing on his face. He had underestimated her. He had made her his enemy. The armored soldier pressed a button on his wrist, and a bright beam of light cut across the ceiling as a transport signal powered up. She took one last look at Tal. "This is your only warning." And then the beam swallowed her and the soldier, leaving Tal standing alone in the flashing red light. His power was gone, his control broken for the first time in years. He realized he wasn't the one holding the strings. She was. The beam of light faded into the cold night air outside the Academy walls. Smoke from the breach curled into the dark sky, and the quiet human stood beside the armored soldier on a sleek black transport platform, hovering above the west landing zone. The Academy alarms echoed behind them, but she didn't look back. She didn't need to. "Extraction successful," the soldier said into his helmet. "But we've got eyes on us." She scanned the skyline. Blinking lights of security drones slicing through the air like sharp blades. "They'll chase," she said, calm as ever. "They'll die trying," the soldier replied. Tapping a sequence on his wrist, the transport ship above them hummed to life, its engines glowing a pale blue. "Get in!" As the ramp closed behind them, the pilot's voice came through the comm. "We've got multiple interceptors on approach." 3 minutes out, she strapped in and pulled her hair into a tight knot. "Then we don't have time to play." The ship tilted sharply upward, breaking through the cloud cover. Red tracer fire streaked past the windows as Academy fighters locked onto their escape path. The soldier at her side pulled up a holographic map. "We can outrun them, but they'll track our heat signature, then make them think we're heading east," she said. "East leads into their defense net," the pilot warned. She looked at the soldier and gave a small smile. "Exactly." The soldier understood immediately. His fingers flew across the console. Firing a decoy drone ahead of them, the fighters turned, chasing the false signal like hungry wolves. Inside the cockpit, the red lights dimmed to blue as they accelerated into deep sky. But even as the ship climbed higher, she could feel something was wrong. Her instincts, the same instincts that had kept her alive her entire life, screamed at her. "Something's off," she whispered. The soldier looked at her, puzzled. "What do you mean?" "They let us leave too easily," she said, her voice quiet but certain. "Tal doesn't give up without a fight." At that exact moment, the cockpit shook violently. A deep, booming sound echoed through the hull. "Missile lock," the pilot shouted. The ship veered hard to the left, but the explosion hit the rear stabilizers. Smoke filled the back chamber. Warning sirens screamed, "We've lost main thrusters!" The pilot yelled, "We're going down!" The soldier grabbed her arm. "Brace!" The stars blurred as the ship spun downward, cutting through the night sky. Trees whipped past as they slammed into a forest beyond the academy's walls. The impact shook the ground, but the emergency shields held. The hull groaned, but didn't split. She pulled herself out of the seat, coughing through the smoke. "Anyone hurt?" "Minor damage," the soldier answered, already pulling a rifle from the wall mount. "They're coming!" Outside the wreck, the night was still for a heartbeat. Then distant footsteps and the crunch of armor against leaves filled the air. Tarl's forces were moving fast, closing in. She crouched near the broken hull, her eyes sharp in the dark. "They want me," she said. "Not the ship. We're not handing you over," the soldier said flatly. She shook her head. "No, we're not." The first wave of security forces broke through the tree line. Armored, armed, and silent, Tarl walked at the front, his uniform smeared with smoke and rage in his eyes. He raised a speaker, his voice cutting through the forest. "You can't run forever, Deathworlder. You're coming with me." She stepped into the moonlight, standing in the wreck's shadow. "I didn't run," she said softly. "You chased the wrong person," Tarl laughed. A low sound. "You think you're dangerous? But you're just a tool, Earth's little weapon." Her expression didn't change, but her eyes hardened. "Tools break," she said. "But monsters bite back." The soldier fired first. A single blast lit up the forest. Tarl's soldiers scattered. She moved like a whisper, fast and precise, ducking behind fallen logs, striking from the shadows. Every time one of Tarl's men tried to flank, they went down before they could blink. "Tarl," she called out between the noise of blaster fire. "This ends here." He stepped forward through the smoke, aiming his weapon at her chest. "Yes, it does," he hissed, but before he could fire, the decoy drone she had launched earlier came roaring back overhead, its energy core overcharged to maximum. It wasn't built to escape, it was built to explode. She gave a small, cold smile. "You followed the wrong signal." The drone detonated in a blinding flash. The shockwave tore through the forest, throwing soldiers into the dirt. Trees cracked like bones. Tarl stumbled backward, dazed and furious. She walked through the smoke toward him, step by step, calm even in the chaos. He raised his weapon again, but his hands were shaking now. He could see it in her eyes, the same quiet certainty that had haunted him since the cafeteria. "You can kill me," he spat. "But it won't matter. They'll come for you. All of them." She stopped in front of him, her voice quiet and steady. "Then I'll make sure they remember why that's a mistake." The forest was burning, the sky above glowing red. Her extraction team signaled a second ship breaking through the smoke. Tarl's men were scattered, too stunned to fight. She turned without another word. Walking back toward the waiting ramp, Tarl knelt in the dirt, his power slipping through his fingers like ash. He had tried to break a Deathworlder, and instead he had been broken. As the ship lifted into the sky, the academy burned behind them, and the quiet girl looked down through the window. Her eyes were still calm, but the storm she had started was only just beginning. The forest burned below as the extraction ship rose into the night sky. The smoke swirled like a storm beneath them, but inside the cabin there was only silence. The quiet humans sat by the small window, watching the flames swallow the academy grounds. Her face was calm, but her mind wasn't still. She knew this was far from over. The soldier removed his helmet and ran a hand over his face. "That was close," he muttered. His eyes flicked to her. "You always leave a mess like this behind?" She didn't look at him. "I don't start the fires," she said softly. "I just end them." The pilot's voice cut through the cabin. "We've got a transmission coming in." "Encrypted," her eyes narrowed. "Earth?" The pilot hesitated. "No, not Earth. It's from orbit. Unknown signature." The soldier leaned over the console, fingers flying across the screen. "That's not good," he said. "They're already on us," the comm crackled. Then a voice filled the ship, deep and cold. "You can't run forever, Deathworlder." She recognized the voice instantly. Tarl, he wasn't dead, not even close. Her jaw tightened. "You should have stayed down," she said into the mic. Her voice steady, Tarl laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "You think this is over because you ran? You're not the only monster Earth made. You're just the one they sent," the pilot cursed softly. "He's got a cruiser above orbit." The soldier turned to her. We can't fight a cruiser, not with this ship. She stood slowly, straightening her jacket. Her eyes were focused, sharp. We're not fighting it, the soldier frowned. Then what's the plan? Make him think we are, she said. They climbed through the atmosphere, the cruiser looming ahead like a dark mountain in space, its hull stretched wide, bristling with weapons. It was waiting for them like a predator waiting to strike. Locking on, the pilot warned. He's going to fire. Good, she said. The soldier shot her a look. Good? Because that means he's not ready for what comes next, she answered. In the cargo bay sat a small black device no bigger than a crate. The soldier's eyes widened as she walked toward it. No, you're not planning to use that, she gave a slight smile. I told you, I don't play games. The device was old, experimental, built on Earth for one purpose, cutting through enemy systems like a knife. She activated the panel and entered a series of codes, the lights on the device flashing red. Target the cruiser's core, she said to the pilot, and open the bay doors. Are you insane? The pilot yelled. We'll be hit before we get close enough to drop it. We won't, she said calmly. Because they still underestimate me, the cruiser fired. The ship shook violently as two plasma rounds streaked past them. One clipped the left wing. Alarm screamed through the cabin. The soldier grabbed a rail. We're not going to make it. She steadied herself, eyes cold. Yes, we will. The pilot dove the ship into a steep spiral, spinning through the cruiser's firing path. One lucky blast would have torn them apart. But luck wasn't what kept them alive. It was precision. She timed the release perfectly. The crate sliding out of the open bay and drifting into the darkness between them and the cruiser. Package away, the pilot gasped. The crate blinked once, twice, then vanished from radar. Tarl's cruiser kept firing. Unaware, she closed her eyes, counting under her breath. 3, 2, 1. A sharp flash lit up the dark sky. The crate unfolded like a black flower, sending a surge of coded signals straight into the cruiser's system. The lights on the enemy ship flickered, then died one by one. Their engines, weapons, and comms went dark. What did you do? The soldier asked, stunned. Reminded them why they should fear Earth, she said. The pilot laughed nervously. You just disabled a cruiser with a box, Tarl's voice returned. But it was no longer calm. It was furious, cracked. You think this scares me? You think this ends with me losing power? She leaned closer to the mic. No, she said. It ends with you realizing I was never the weak one. The transmission cut out. The cruiser hung motionless in orbit like a dead beast, powerless. They cleared the gravity well and set course for deep space. The stars opened wide before them, endless and silent. The soldier leaned back in his seat, shaking his head. You're insane, he muttered. But I like it. She looked out the window, her expression unreadable. I didn't want this war, she whispered. But if they bring it to me, I'll make sure they regret it. The pilot exhaled slowly. So what now? She turned to them, her eyes steady and cold. Now, she said, we make sure they never forget what a Deathworlder can do. Behind them, Tarl's cruiser floated helpless in orbit, and every listening ear across the stars would remember that night. She had walked into their academy as a quiet girl, but she left it as a storm no one could control. The galaxy would speak her name in whispers, but fear would carry it farther than any rumor ever could.